This episode is brought to you by ZDMS. Okay, guys, physical inventory. Most dealers do it once a year. Some avoid it altogether. And honestly, who can blame them? Closing the store for days, paying staff to count parts, and still ending up with inaccurate data, it's a painful process that costs time and money. ZDMS changes that. With RFID physical inventory, 1 or 2 employees can complete a full store count in a single evening. No closing, no disruption, just pull the trigger on a handheld scanner and walk the floor. No line of sight required, no climbing shelves, no bending under counters, just fast, accurate counts feeding directly into your ZDMS system. And because it runs inside ZDMS's perpetual inventory system, your data is always current. That means better analytics, less obsolescence, and fewer lost sales. This is the technology Powersports dealers needed, and ZDMS is the only DMS in the industry to build it. Talk to your ZDMS rep today, or to learn more, visit zdms.com/fixit.
You're like a podcasting legend that I look up to now.
Wow.
I didn't realize that you were just also winging it like we were.
I think that's most of the podcast game. You just have some conversations and hope that you find some good stuff out of them.
Yeah, just recently I was sending around the podcast to a couple of people. I got a message back that was like, "Hey, that first episode's kind of hard to listen to." I'm like, "I know, it's the first one. Like every podcast is that way. Like go to any podcast, go to episode 1, and it's a little rough."
It's a little rough. My first one was pretty terrible also. Yeah.
Exactly. But I feel like I can't delete it because that's like, you have to see the evolution that it has made over time. We've gotten better at it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like historical documents, you got to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
It is. You gotta, the jokes we made on episode 1, like, nah, that's probably not gonna say those again. That was a stupid way to start this whole episode up. But hey, now
we're gonna talk about the jokes we made on the last one.
It's a good point. We get better every time. All right, every time.
That's how it works.
What are we like? This is episode 21 or 22 or something like that.
Something like that.
The viewer will know more than us at this point. But I was talking to a guy yesterday who's also started a podcast, because if you're a millennial, you have to have a podcast now. Very true. And he was saying the only 10% of podcasters make it past the 3rd episode, and 10% of that group makes it past the 20 episode mark. So to be in this, it's like a literal 1% of podcasters making it past 20. And how many have you done now? You've been running this for a few years, right?
A few years, yeah. So I actually had the advantage of taking over an existing podcast that already had, I think, 90 some odd episodes. The guy that ran it before me, his name was Brian Croft, who I think we all know. He's an industry guy, super cool dude. And then, him and I had a podcast. We actually talked about what I hope to talk about with you guys today, used bikes and inventory management.
Yeah.
But he had accepted another job offer with one of the OEMs. And I think that there was a little bit of a conflict of interest. And after that most recent episode that him and I had, he called me up and he was like, "Hey man, I either got to shut this thing down, or I want to sell it to you, or, maybe you can take it over."
Yeah.
I asked him how much. He gave me a number. I said, "Done. I'll send you a check." And I got to keep all the original content. I got this microphone, a mixing board, all of the equipment. And just like that, I was a podcaster on day 1. It was kind of crazy.
Damn. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. So when did you
thank you.
When did you take the reins of it?
I took the reins. Oh gosh. I think that was in the summer of 2023. And we've been trying to do, several episodes per month. I try to do something weekly.
Yeah.
And it's much like yours. It's guest driven. We bring on experts. We bring on people from the industry that have something to offer. It's a pitch free zone, is always what I like to say, is don't hammer on whatever you're trying to sell to these dealers who listen, but rather inform them, have some experience that you bring to the table, talk about some things that work, some things that don't work. Also, we love to talk about the failures, and hey, watch out for this. But yeah, I mean, we've done probably, I don't know, 50, 60 episodes since then. And it's been fun, man. I got to be introduced to many people like yourself, that I wouldn't otherwise cross paths with normally, and chat and collaborate. And this usually leads to other things that we can talk about, and it was just great. Let me ask you a question though. On your podcast, you've crossed that 20 mark, right? So now you just made it, right?
Just made it.
Hopefully this won't be the last episode here that we
that'd be
that
real
we put
sad.
out.
Yeah.
But from the first episode up until now, what do you think is the biggest thing that you've changed or updated or just kind of gone a different route with?
Man, that's interesting. I think Danny would probably be better at answering this. I've just been in the creation and editing of it like so closely that I don't probably see the changes. It's like watching your kid grow up. You're like, you don't actually notice them grow up. When you look back at photos, you're like, holy shit, that's a lot of growth. So it's probably hard for me to say exactly what has changed, but I do feel like I've gotten the rhythm of what is required, not just in the conversation. I'm like, okay, like how does the conversation go? How do you make sure that it flows naturally? It doesn't feel super scripted or like, because they aren't really. It's just like, hey, what do you want to talk about? Like, here's my ideas. But also, when this gets done, what does the editing look like? How do we what's the format so the work is consistent and the podcast is consistent? I feel like that's the thing that's changed. But Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that's the big difference. I don't know. We've had so much fun with it so far. I'd say from a content point of view, we haven't really changed anything. If we've changed anything, it's just been the editing, little minor things of putting a preview at the beginning of the episode and then doing, a transition and doing our own introduction before the podcast starts, different things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, as far as content, we've kind of been on a steady path of just finding cool, interesting people to talk to in the industry. It's a small industry, and making connections.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that we have not. I mean, 20 episodes in, we haven't gotten to a point where there aren't a list of cool people who we want to talk about the future of the industry with. And so, it's fun. If you've been in the industry long enough, and Jacob, I know that you'd feel the same way. Like, once you're in the industry long enough, you recognize all the things that are awesome about it. And then you recognize all the things that are like really stupid and broken. Like,
Yes.
the way we're doing this is not the right way to do this. And there are a lot of creative people all around the industry that are solving problems in really interesting ways. Sometimes it's hard to get those people to share their ideas because, that's their competitive advantage. But I've been really pleasantly surprised by how many people who say, yeah, I'd absolutely tell everybody else how to do it. Like, it worked for me and made my life better. And if it'll make yours better, then great. So I'm a little nervous that maybe that ends someday, but man, you guys are a lot more episodes in than we are. So you're still talking to cool people. So
Still doing it, man. Yeah. Yeah. And we're putting out some older content too that is still relevant. Like, we'll do like a throwback episode. We've got so many episodes now that we can go back 3 years, re-edit, remaster an episode and go, man, this really still makes sense today. What they talked about during COVID, during 2020 or 2021. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Actually, that brings me to an interesting point. The difference between pre-COVID and post-COVID and what life looks like for dealers or just like across the entire industry. What is your big take on that? What are the things that you're seeing? I know it's a very broad statement there, but what are you noticing in, like, from the days of you running stores to now kind of looking back at it and seeing it change?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think everybody would agree that the COVID times were bananas, and everybody says that, and we're all probably sick of hearing that. But what I see is, and this is not just me, but this is everybody that we work with, is that we're kind of returning to a pre-COVID time again in terms of the numbers, the performance, even some of the financials, and they were not great. They were a little bit of a grind, a little bit of a struggle. You had to really shore up your processes and make sure your expenses are good and you had the right kind of inventory and you weren't sitting on aged stuff. I mean, it was kind of a, let's put all of our efforts towards this one common goal. And then, when COVID hit, it was just, all right, gloves off. Everything's just nuts. Let's sell everything, make all the money. Everybody's sitting fat and happy, hire a whole bunch of people that probably don't belong in this industry. I think a lot of that stuff is being flushed out. We're kind of returning back to a norm.
It is. And, it's funny that you say norm because, you know, we, my family had owned this dealership. It was TTRNO, and we owned it. It's now called Moto Julia, but we owned it for 17 years, and the grind got harder and harder and harder. It seemed like as the industry was like, it was struggling before COVID, but it wasn't like it was consistently struggling. Like even watching national average data coming through, like Garage Composites or any of those groups, you could see the national averages were getting like net profit was getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and it was heading in a really bad direction. And so we sold because of that. I was like, this is not a good sign. We probably should like try to escape this right now. That's why we brought on BMW to increase the blue sky so we could actually get the thing sold for a little higher multiple than we had before. And so like that strategy was in place for a few years to be like, all right, we're exiting. Here's how we're going to do it. But I say all that because it was a gradual enough move that the entire industry recognized the grind required to make it happen. And I don't just mean grind as being like this terrible thing, but like when we were running it down here, man, our advisors were dialed, right? And I had them for years. My salespeople were incredibly dialed. Like our processes were perfect. And it had to be absolutely perfect for us to be able to make some money. And COVID not only made us fat and happy, but it also, I wasn't running the store, so I wasn't able to benefit from all the extra cash that came in, but which was a bummer. It turns out it was a real bummer. But I feel like it returned back to normal so quickly that everybody's like caught completely unprepared, and they forgot what it was like to have that dialed in of a process. So we're still hemorrhaging money in areas where it's like we kept on that larger staff for way too long. And now like not getting that payroll back, or we held on to those major units for way too long. And now our product's super aged. And if it's new major units, it's, the flooring expense is eating us alive. And that bike isn't sexier. It's not going to sell for more because it's older. There's no like, sexy old mature motorcycle market out there. I mean, maybe, but like that doesn't exist. So it's going to have to be this hit, or it feels like it has to be this hit that every store has to take to tighten up, improve their processes even more, and then take a huge hit on major unit inventory, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
With
it is.
With that being said, you managed inventory before, and we'll get into MotoHunt and how actually we at the dealer lab and at Moto Julia have used MotoHunt like so much to help us manage down even our new major unit inventory, not just buy and use, but like strategizing our new. But before you were at MotoHunt doing all that, can you give us a little bit of your history of like maybe how you got it? We can go all the way back to how you got into the industry, then what you were doing at like, the whole thing up to MotoHunt. Just give us the background.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I entered this industry, Powersports, in 2010. Before that, I was in the automotive business, kind of a 7-year master tech. I went to school to learn how to work on cars in the early 2000s. And so this is kind of like my
side. For the fixed
yeah. I'm a fixed op guy. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. Busting knuckles and everything, working on hot, dirty cars all day long.
That's okay.
And that was a good living. I really, really loved it. But, after several years, I kind of fell out of love with it because I would be, kicking my own ass to make my hours in the shop. And I'm out here in Arizona, so it's super hot during the summertime and the cars are, 200 degrees and you got to, get them out quick. But I would be, looking at the front of the dealership and these sales guys out there, with their nice watches and fancy shoes. And I'm like, I think I can do that. These guys look like they have a little bit easier time and probably making more money. And so I transitioned a little bit into the sales side, and there was an opening for what at that time was called a BDC manager, business development center manager, which are very common in the automotive business. It's kind of a hit or miss sometimes in power sports, and there's lots of opinions on whether you should have one or not. But that was kind of my first step into the digital realm of how to retail in the automotive market using internet, websites, phone, text messaging. This was still the BlackBerry era, right? So people, were texting heavily and emailing heavily and advertising and just getting leads, right? Trying to get as many leads and work them through the BDC, follow-up process as it was. I took that over to Powersports shortly after with a company called RideNow. And I worked at their newly flagshipped location in Peoria, Arizona.
Yep.
130,000 square foot showroom. I mean, it's a gigantic building. Yeah.
Damn.
And so crushed it there, worked with a really great team. A lot of those guys I'm still connected with: Chris Schricker, Josh Reynolds, Jason King, Brian Brown. A lot of these guys moved on to be general managers and run their own stores. And we just killed it. They moved me to the corporate level to run an internal BDC, and that eventually became the internet director over the entire company. And so my role with the company was a little bit what we'll talk about today, but it really had to do with digital in essence, right? I was responsible for the 50 plus websites around the country in 7 different states, all the inventory. There were times where we had 10,000 plus units online. It combined, right? All the social media, all the email newsletter marketing, everything that you can imagine that would touch a customer digitally kind of went through me and my team.
Yep.
And the biggest part of that was the inventory management. How do we be super dominant on the online arena, right? In combat, basically, because we're a very aggressive company at the time.
Yeah.
How do we move the metal online and get these numbers up to match or seemingly outpace what our showroom sales could do?
Yeah.
And we were able to accomplish that. That's one of my shining examples of something that I'm really, really proud of that we were able to accomplish. And they still practice a lot of that stuff today at the individual stores.
Yeah.
But you and I come from different backgrounds, right? You're more on the mom and pop side, and it's localized, and you're responsible for a lot of the people like a family. I mean, I came from the complete opposite side of the spectrum, and when it talks about taking a hit on an aged unit or, moving something that is at a loss, right? That is just par for the course. It's part of business. It just needs to get done, move on, right? Whereas the mom and pop side, that hurts, right? You take a couple $100 loser or doc only deal that, is on a unit that you sat on, 365 days or plus. It's like, ouch, right? I needed to make some money on that so that I can make payroll this next month, right?
Exactly. Like I don't have
So,
I got to pay the bank that cash. Like I can't.
Yeah. You got to pay your flooring costs, pay everything. I mean, the expenses are not shared like they were in the corporate world. And there's certainly a good amount of consolidation going on in our industry. With the Motos America thing, certainly RideNow is buying stores, all sorts of things going on. Automotive dealerships are stepping into it now, and they're buying up a lot of Powersports locations around the country. So, what I learned though is that there's certain steps that you can take to kind of prevent some of these things. Inventory management, I believe, is one of our biggest assets at the dealership. It's basically everything that we do. I love fixed ops. I love parts, accessories, and gear. But in my mind, and what I was taught and what I believe also, is that the motorcycle sales or the unit sales drive the entire rest of the other 2-3 departments in the dealership. You cannot sell service to somebody if they don't buy a bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's and then after that, it's the service department's, job, responsibility, accountability to keep that customer coming back and happy through multiple years of servicing and customer service rather, until the customer gets back into the buying cycle again, and they get their next one and they get the upgrade, and then it starts all over again.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of where I come from in terms of the thought process behind the inventory management. We got to move the metal. We got to do it effectively. We got to do it with the numbers and not so much the emotion, and using software like what we built to help the dealers do that.
Yeah. It's really funny. I wasn't aware that you were a service guy first. And now it makes a hell of a lot more sense as to why you're so inventory management focused. Because, there was a time when we were selling my store originally, I've always been a fixed ops guy, master technician as well, like doing that, like came from the service side, right? And there was a moment when we were selling it that my brother had gotten another job. My brother was always the sales manager. He always ran the front of house. And so he leaves and I became the GM and sales manager, service manager, right? Like the whole thing. That's the first time I stepped into that role and was like, all right, cool. Like, where's the spreadsheets you run inventory off of? Like, tell me like everything in service is so incredibly black and white that I
Yep.
came into the front assuming that like, okay, cool, like black and white. This customer wants to buy this vehicle. Awesome. What's the price of the vehicle? And it's like, oh, well, MSRP is this and cost is this. So like somewhere in between. And I thought there's nothing that helps you make an informed decision on how much margin we should be making because it's been here this long or we paid this much in flooring, right? And it was like, nope, we go, yeah. You think he would pay more? And I'm like, that's it. That's the whole strategy. So, there was only, it was a short period of time, maybe a year. I don't know. It was not a very long time where I was running sales before we sold the dealership, right? So it was like just kind of this holdover, not even a year, less than a year.
Crash course.
It was a crash course. So I was like, shit, I can't let the place crumble right before we sell it. That's like even worse. But the amount of things that like the like engineer's mind that comes with being a mechanic, looking at that inventory and being like, we need to at least have some way of measuring this. Or for me, it really became like, I am not a sales guy, and I will admit that to anybody. I feel not good about the whole like make a friend, build a relationship with a customer, and then my objective becomes squeaking out as much money as I possibly can out of you. And like that's the whole goal. There's no other strategy behind it other than being like, I want to drain your pockets, Mr. Fake Friend. Like I hated that feeling. So
Yeah.
I wanted to create a systemized way just to make myself be able to sleep at night, to go, okay, this is what it's worth based on how long it's been here and everything else. Now, granted, we've learned and done all sorts, like we've built a lot of really cool, useful tools, especially in the dealer lab to run this strategy in an effective and profitable way. But even back then, just to be able to say, how many days has it been here? How much flooring have I paid? Those two numbers identify the price it needs to sell. I think that came from being a fixed ops guy and saying,
Yep.
there's gotta be rules. And I love MotoHunt and what you guys have done with it so much because it gives me all the things I need to set up the rules to make informed and like justified decisions. So anyway, so tell me, we talked about this a little bit at AIM, the idea of like how MotoHunt got started, and you were like what you were building and how it ended up spinning off into what it is now. So how did that happen?
Yeah. I love that you brought up the technician's mindset of it, right? And it's all black and white. Or might I offer another alternative? It's kind of the deductive reasoning or the process of elimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get to a point to where I can remove all of these things that I don't need to see and just kind of get to the core of what the issue is and solve for that problem?
Yeah.
And so, yes, there was a lot of that thought into it. It's like, okay, well, what do we need and how do we do it? And what do we look at? What's most important? All that bubbles to the top. And yes, that was kind of how we built it. Now, I don't want to take credit for all of the MotoHunt, right? I've got a very smart partner, Michael, that is the software engineer, data guy.
Rad.
Super smart.
We love Michael.
Fired up when we talk. It's like so much fun to talk with him.
Very fun. Yep. Very smart. He has a Google background, and he actually is responsible for a lot of the Google products, or, when you go to search and you look up something, him and his team are the guy that's responsible for half of the shit we use. We don't even know who to thank for that. Right. So you can say your thanks later to him.
If you watch this, thank you, Michael. It's been
thank you, Michael.
I mean, I
love
don't like
Google. Love Google.
The world, but oh well. There's AI thing.
Well, he was part of that team. Silicon Valley guy, right? But as far as the dealer ops part of it, that was the contribution that I had. And so in the early days of MotoHunt, we actually had built it under the RideNow way of how we were managing these big inventory sets.
Where it's not emotion based. It is like it's logical decision making.
Logical decision making, but it was very slow and it was very tedious, right? So I'll take you in the Wayback Machine. Back when we were doing these meetings, there was a good amount of probably 3 or 4 days prep leading up into the meeting. Now, once the meeting hit, a director pool of, the fixed ops guy, myself, management, ownership, a couple of GMs. We would put on the big screen a Excel spreadsheet basically and line item all of the units that we had to look at for that day. And we would split them up into new or used, Harley, non-Harley. And we would kind of just go line by line, starting with the age stuff at the top. But they would all be filled in with manually copied and pasted JD Powers, dirty book, clean book, retail, NPA wholesale, how many are in the network, which was still kind of a falsified number because it was old by the time we got to that meeting. And this would take multiple days, all day, 8-hour days. We would order lunch in, we would eat and just, go right back at it. And then once we kind of had that process finished, we would send it out to our stores and say, here's what you need to either change the pricing on, you need to transfer it to this other store, you need to sell it to auction, you need to write it down, if there was a cash value on it that we needed to hit better. And I'm looking around and I'm going, there has to be a better way. Now, my experience in automotive before Powersports, we had tools at our disposal that could do these kind of things. The most popular one called vAuto, and there's a couple other out there. And I go, you know what? I think I can build this. I pitched it to ownership. They gave me some seed money and they go, they let me off the chain and they go, get it. Right.
Yeah.
And I had found Michael at the time, and we started to build the early inception of what MotoHunt is today, back then with the RideNow group, as the big customer that could provide a lot of inventory, a lot of processes. And I basically brain dumped into the entire tool exactly how it needs to operate and the capabilities that it needed to have.
Yep.
And that's what you're looking at today. And so that's why I'm like super excited to now be obviously part of the ownership with the company and be in charge of all the be the cheerleader basically, right? Like, hey, the industry doesn't really have a good quality tool that helps dealers understand a lot of this aggregate information they'd have to otherwise log into 5 or 6 different places if they even had the time to do that, or the understanding that I need to look here or I need to look here.
Yeah.
And it just kind of provides that one and only place that they can go and say, hey, this is what I need to do with it. I need to make a decision on this one. Or even on the buying side, when you're taking stuff in, here's the kind of values that I need to put it at. Here's my competition. Here's some historical data on it. And it just kind of rolls it up into one nice little package for them.
Yeah. No, what's funny, I came in to do the turnaround here, and obviously MotoHunt didn't exist when we were running the store. We were doing, I would love to say we were doing the same level of information you were. We were not. We were, again, just like guessing at the way the wind was moving that day. But once I came in and saw how it was being used with the sales manager who was here at the time, it was just, honestly, when I asked him about it, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've used it every once in a while." He showed me, and then I started leaning on him more. And then and actually, you and I met at one point. You're like, "Oh yeah, these are the dates." He actually started pulling appraisals, and I was like, "Oh, that was when I had the meeting with him. He wasn't doing shit before that." Like, wait a second. So, he's no longer here, but the things that we were that. The way that we were able to see our inventory afterwards, like just the emotion pulled out of it, allowed us to end the year with a strategy that was really incredible. Like we were able to very clearly say, okay, yes, we had an owner who still owned the dealership that I'm having to explain, like, look, man, you're going to have a huge write-off. And for me to just tell you that because it feels right and because the stuff is aged is one thing, but to be able to use a program like MotoHunt and say, okay, these are the prices that they're selling at all across the country. This is the value it's actually at right now. You're not going to sell this product at this price, which means you're going to take this hit. So let's make a strategy that's going to like lessen the blow, but also get us healthy again. And so MotoHunt was a huge part of getting healthy. And it was interesting when we saw each other at AIM, and I met with you and Michael and Matt about just kind of like, show me more about what's possible. It was really cool to see that not only was there more stuff, like I wasn't even scratching the surface of what was possible with your product, but it was also like, you guys are still solving some really cool, interesting problems right now. Like you're still continuing to improve this thing as you go. So what are some of the things that you guys are working on now? And uh, uh, like not just in used inventory, but is there like the tool, the way we were using it, I don't feel like was as commonplace. Like when I was talking about using it to manage new inventory as much, didn't seem like it was much more about how we're doing used. So what are you guys doing with it now? And then I want to get into you helping us figure out how to improve our used game. So
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So this thing is ever evolving, just like any software that you subscribe to, right? There's going to be a good amount of tweaks or updates. But what I'm really proud of is that we've got a superb support team that intakes suggestions from all of our dealers every single day, every single week. And we're like, okay, this dealer needs this. How does this fit into the global, the global settings of things? Is this something that other dealers could use? This one dealer over here has a certain kind of process, because every dealer's unique, and even though we're all selling in dealership type settings, everybody's got their own little, flavor, right? Their
yeah,
little
very true.
twist of lime, right?
Yep.
Which I love, right? Is because there's no one good answer. There's no one good idea. They're all great ideas. And so we're always implementing these little things, these little suggestions into the tools for that user interface so that they can say, whoa, okay, cool. This is a new way of looking at things, much like you. And you go, I didn't really know what I didn't know. And there's probably things I still don't know that the tool can show me. So when it comes to the new stuff, right, that was actually how it was designed in inception, because we wanted to make sure that we hit a couple factors with any inventory, but new being the priority, right? And, with the RideNow stores, we had, 60-70% of all of our inventory new, between all of the different brands, whereas only 30% was in that pre-owned, right? And so we wanted to make sure that we had all of the vehicles represented properly. We're talking about like the correct title, simple stuff, correct title, correct pricing that's competitive. We want to make sure that we had the right amount of pictures on it. We wanted to make sure that we had summaries on it. If there was a VIN discrepancy, right, we had a little triggering system that would say, hey, this is probably wrong, or it's a 4x4 model, not a 2-wheel drive model, or, if we're talking about the off-road, or, there's all sorts of different ways that we can go with that. The flooring stuff, and I actually want to give some credit to you and Onex, is that you've got a really cool program that talks about that flooring system, right?
Yeah.
And so these are all little things that, through our partnerships and collaborations, it just kind of makes it, into one thing, right? That you can kind of look at and you go, okay, here's the factors that matter most to me: age, the flooring cost on it, the competitive pricing, is it well represented online, and can we sell it quickly in a certain time frame so that I'm making profit on it? Because that's, at the end of the day, the name of the game, right?
Yep.
Now, with the pre-owned side, this is just us making sure that we are following the trends of what dealerships are doing. And in the past 18 months, all I'm hearing is pre-owned, pre-owned, pre-owned.
Yeah.
And that's mainly for a couple of reasons. The new OEMs have caught up with the manufacturing demand, and they have pumped a whole bunch of units into our dealerships, while simultaneously demand has gone a little sideways, right? People aren't buying everything anymore. They're being a little bit more cautious with their spend, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. This industry is cyclical, just like most, right? And so, they're being stuffed with new bikes. They got to sell. The ones that they are selling, they're not making much profit on. Pre-owned is an ever-growing, contentious brand, and we do consider it its own brand, right? There's Polaris and Harley, and then there's pre-owned, right?
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
when we talk about, them acquiring and using an acquisition strategy to get bikes, it's not only about the buying side. It's like, how can I find more from more places that are maybe not as competitive to all of my other dealer competitors out there, that I can get a good deal on? I can get it through my shop quickly. I can put it out front, and I can sell it in under 90 days and make several $1,000s on it, right?
Yeah.
It's just really kind of what dealers are wanting, that we're shifting over to, and providing all of these resources so that they can do just that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you're so right that used is its own brand. I mean, pre-owned is its own thing, and it is such, when you start looking at it like, you know, that inventory management tool that we were developing and are using here and are going to make commercially available, not yet, but doing it. But that tool is studies these trends of flooring and pricing, and we're using some of your data to make this even more valuable and a great tool to make sure that it really does manage its inventory. But that piece is, it not only pulls the emotion out of it, but it also kind of gamifies the inventory management of it. It becomes
Yes.
kind of fun, and you also can kind of strategize a little more effectively. What has been interesting with some of our major unit stuff, and this is no surprise to anybody who's managing inventory, but man, I've got a bunch of major unit inventory that I just got in recently. Right, it's sitting on the showroom floor for 90 days now, and I need to start moving it because it's now on the juice. Like, flooring has started, but oh shit, it's got map policy and I can't advertise it for cheaper. I can't make it any more attractive. I'm not saying map is a bad thing. I understand why it's there. It's meant to hold margin, but I am, in a small dealership, I'm hemorrhaging money when it's $120 a month per bike that's sitting on the showroom floor that's all on juice. And so you're
Yep.
right, there's so much more risk when it comes to major units from manufacturers. But that risk all goes away when you're playing a really good pre-owned game, and you go, I know exactly what I can get that thing at auction for because I can pull it from NPA, I can pull it from anybody else that's selling, or at least close enough. It might change here and there, but I know what that thing's been selling for at auction. I know what that thing is listed for all across the internet. There's fewer of them. They're all unique because they're used with different mileage and everything else. And that game becomes really fun. You just need to know what all of your little chess pieces are and how they all move. And that's what I think has been really fun about playing with MotoHunt and using that as a way to strategize my used inventory. But I say all that to say that we are still at the dealer lab we're not leaning into pre-owned enough. We're still wrapping our head around just getting our inventory overall fixed and settled and taken care of. But what would you suggest as we are really looking to increase our strategy and increase our inventory count in pre-owned? What would you suggest to do that? What's the strategy we should be using?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple. But before I answer that, I want to say that I agree with everything you just said, with the exception of the risk part. You still have risk when it comes to pre-owned bikes, because more often than not, it is the capital from ownership that is assigned to these used bikes. Sometimes they can go on your existing floor plan, and that's all good and fine. You're still paying juice on some of them. But if you make an improper buy, if you buy it for too much, if it's not the right kind of model mix, if it's got some problems because the thing was beat on and it didn't get a proper inspection, and now you're having to invest a couple $1,000s into an engine rebuild. I mean, there's all sorts of risks, just in a different way. It's a transfer of risk, right? From the OEM taking all my money to this used bike taking all my money, right?
Yeah,
so you still have to play it very, very, very carefully to make sure that that process that you put into place for when you acquire a bike, the things you got to look out for and the things you got to check off on basically a list of, say, okay, it meets this, it meets this, it meets this.
Yeah.
Great. Now it's ours, right? And we can cut a check for it. But when it comes to acquiring bikes, right, we'll kind of go into that, right? The easiest way, the most cost-effective way, is to look in the back of your building. And I'm talking about the service department yet again, right? We're both fixed op guys. We see the amount of traffic that come through our service department on a daily basis. And I don't think that dealerships are utilizing that enough as an acquisition stream and as an equitable situation for you and the customer. Let's just take a scenario. An average dealership would probably write maybe 100 repair orders per month, right? A good portion of those are going to be customer pay, where they're not warranty, they're not internal, they're not accessory builds, whatnot. So now you have this opportunity to look at a data set of an inflow of bikes that actually are in your building. You can literally go to the back and, go look at them in person and inspect them. They've already been looked at usually, and you already are kind of aware of their problems, right? Because they're coming in for an issue. It doesn't do this. The turn signal is broke. It needs a rear tire, whatever the case may be. And you can sit down now with that customer in your own home field advantage and say, hey, I saw that you have this 6-year-old bike. It's got 15,000 miles on it. You got $1,000 bill staring you in the face. Let me turn that into an actual trade for a brand new one. Keep you at the same payment. We'll pay off your old one, little to no money down, whatever your pitch may be. And I actually see that as taking care of the customer, because you're empathetic to their needs and saying, I think I can upgrade you for little to no cost from this old one to this brand new one. And you just start the cycle over again. What do you think about that?
I mean, that is a huge part of where we want to be getting pre-owned inventory from. So I completely agree. The hurdle, and I would love to know what your thought of the hurdle is. My belief is the hurdle is getting the communication to flow between the front and back of house. That seems like the biggest breakdown between those two, where these departments operate like their own little silos. And so the sales department is not communicating with service about what they're doing, except when they need a unit prepped. And service is not communicating with sales because they are inundated with work. And so, I mean, one of the early things that we had done to try and overcome this before is just making sure there's daily huddles between management, service manager, sales manager. You meet on a daily basis just to discuss what your appointments are. Who's coming into service today? If I can look up, my sales department now can look up those vehicles. We can start working on values before they ever arrive. And then for the sales department, talking about who's coming in to look at bikes today, because that may turn into a major unit that I've got to shuffle my entire schedule around for. So if I can just huddle for a couple minutes, I think that's step number one. But it's also, I think, one thing that you guys, I know I don't want you to explain more of the API integration that you guys do and what that means and how to set it up. But you guys offer something that's really, really cool. And it's the idea that figuring out a value of the bike in service is kind of an important step that even a service advisor needs to be able to look at and be aware of. And I say that because if I have a customer who has a $2,000 bill and their bike isn't really worth that, then it's going to be either the advisor going, hey, customer, here's your $2,000 bill, or that advisor recognizing that this is a person I need to tell my sales manager about, so we can have the same conversation you just had of like, hey, this is going to be better for you as a customer. I think service advisors are it's not often that they think in that way, and that's not because they're incapable. It's because they're overwhelmed with the amount of workload that's coming through. So we've got this, you're right, incredible stream of opportunity that's constantly going through service departments. And the people we depend upon to figure that out are the same people we depend upon to make all those phone calls to customers to come in and keep them updated all the time and quote the labor time and quote, it's just like too much on the desk of the advisor. So with that being said, you're a fixed ops guy too. What can we do to make it easier for the service advisors to know that that's an option that they have in their back pocket?
You're 100% right. The service advisor's job is one of the toughest in the dealership.
Dude, I had to go back there recently and do that role. It still sucks.
Yeah,
it's tough. You have so much liability. You have customer service. You have to deal with technicians. You have to deal with the sales department. You have to deal with the parts department. I mean, they are an all hands on deck role.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a full contact sport. Yep, I like that.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. They're probably not thinking, how can I help this customer get out of this vehicle? They're probably just thinking, oh, I need to make sure we get this thing fixed in a timely manner, get it back to the customer, cashier the ticket, and then I'm on to my next one, right? That's, I think, the kind of Groundhog's Day that most of these advisors go through.
Great.
Now, I will say that with the example that you gave, maybe an incentive for that advisor, and it's constantly messaged to them to say, hey, any customer you bring up to the sales department that works out in a deal, you get $100 in a spiff, or $200 or $500. I mean, make it crazy if you want.
Yeah.
Right. It's all dependent on how and what your need is for those used bikes. But again, it's basically going to be beholden to that service advisor to make that introduction. And even if it's incentivized, it cannot be a reliable source.
Yep.
So what I did in my early days is I used to just take the proactive approach, and I would go talk to the manager every single day. I would say, hey, man, it's usually about noon at this time or lunchtime, because we get the big influx of customers dropping off their bikes in the morning before work. About noon, I would go back, hey, man, can I get a list of all of the written repair orders for the day? I would go take that back to my desk. And before MotoHunt, I would sit there and list all the JD Power values. I would look up a sales transaction history, because me as a sales guy didn't have access to the RO. So I would look up if they bought it there before, maybe estimate a payoff if I can see that they financed it with rate and term. And then after all that work, towards the end of the day, I would start sending out messages. Hey, you might be in an equitable situation, or, hey, I can get you, X amount of overfare dollars for this vehicle, or, have you seen the new 2025, 2026, for keeping current? And it's like, wow, this is a lot of work. And so what I did was I basically took that process, I injected it into MotoHunt, and I said, you know what? Let's just create the back of the house information to the front of the house, put it in front of the guys who are responsible for looking at this stuff, and let them basically have this shopping list of units that might be on their acquisition list, their hunt list, and let them make the decision on, I'm going to approach this customer or not.
Yeah.
Now, the trouble with all of that is that it still requires a process. It still requires somebody to take ownership of that role within the dealership, to not only look at them and make a decision on what they want to buy, but to also contact the customer, thank them for bringing it in for service, but now, turn it into a pitch for a trade-in.
Yeah. I mean, God, that last statement there really resonates. None of the cool stuff that you build or Michael builds, or the cool things that we've built, equity mining, all that kind of same shit you were talking about earlier, none of that stuff ends up moving the needle at all if people don't change their process and use it. And it's so frustrating, right? You built an incredibly cool tool to automatically pull all of the repair order data into your system, automatically identify the values of all those vehicles, and sales managers have their own internal shopping list, like, at every moment of the day. How many people actually use that? Do you have any, like?
It's growing, but it's an adoption rate, right?
It
so
is. It's
just like everything new, there is a period of time to where you have to make people aware of it. You have to kind of explain what it is that they're looking at, how to go about doing what they need to do while looking at this stuff. And, the best example, I'm not perfect, and it's probably an imperfect workflow, but the data's there. And if someone were to heed my advice and say, this is all you need to look at, and then you go do the deal, they would be buying multiple bikes per month. Some of our dealers that have absolutely just clicked it, right? They just like, yes, I get it. I see it. I'm on it. They have bought 15 to 16 incremental units per month, trade-ins, a mixture between trade-ins and outright purchases, right? But they're getting 16 additional units per month just out of their service department.
Damn.
It's crazy.
So, okay. I know this is going to be hard because you're not sharing your screen, but because I know that there are people listening to this right now. Actually, funny enough, we have these dealer cohort meetings where we've got a bunch of dealers that we get together and kind of talk about processes that are working and different tools. You and I had gotten off of our meeting a couple weeks ago, just kind of, you were showing me some of the features, and I got right onto a meeting with a group of dealers that I was working with, all of which are using MotoHunt. And I was like, guys, have you seen this feature? And I walked through the whole thing, and it was like mind blowing. So can you just quickly tell, if there's a dealer listening right now who has MotoHunt, what are the button clicks they have to do to actually make this happen? Or what are the steps to pull this off?
Yes. Well, first of all, you have to have the DMS API integration, right? So right off the bat, that's kind of hurdle number one. If we don't have an API integration, I can't pull your service repair orders. So make sure you got that, or contact me. We'll hook it up, right? It's not a big deal at all. But secondarily, it's in your appraisal screen. So there are multiple buttons that we bucket your inventory in, like live inventory. This is all your inventory that's live on your website. There's inactive inventory. These are in-stock units that are not live on your inventory. There's sold. There's browse, right? If you want to look at vehicles outside of your dealership. But then there's the appraisal screen. And this would be the bucket where all of your potential trade-ins would go. This is anything that you might want to buy.
Yeah.
Manual trade appraisals. We have a little website widget that collects customers initiated leads that want to trade or sell from your website and put those into there. But it's just in your appraisal system, and it's called literally DMS RO because that's where the ROs are written, the repair orders. And so you could segregate them to just show your DMS ROs. You can filter them. You can do anything that you want to do, but it's an automated all the time process that for one-to-one, if a customer pay identified repair order is written by your service advisor, it will basically go into there automatically for the sales department to look at and go, oh, here's this cool unit that just came in literally this morning. Here's all the values on it. Here's my VIN history on it. Looks like we sold this one in the past or it came from this competitor. And now they're here getting what? An oil change and a tire done, right? And it's got 15,000 miles on it. Let's go approach this guy with a written offer, something that we can staple to the repair order, something that we can call him, send him an email, send him a text. Hey, appreciate you bringing in your vehicle for this service, but XYZ, right? And that's kind of the sales process and the salesmanship that goes into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool that that tool exists now. I mean, it is something that has to be in the sales manager's back pocket all the time to recognize that, like, this is for the amount of repair orders coming in and out of shops every day, like, it's something you got to do on a daily basis. Go look at what that list looks like, what new stuff is there. I mean, it's a really cool tool. So
Thank
glad
you.
you have it. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Hey, so I do want to ask, with the dealer lab, a big part of our focus is trying to identify what does the future look like? If we were going to look 5 years, maybe even 10 years down the line, what are dealerships, or what are they going to be like? What things should we be trying or working toward? What's your vision? You've been in the industry long enough. Like, what do you think is going to change? And you can be as wild as you'd like. I've said some wild shit on this podcast too. So what does it look like to you?
Yeah, I'd also throw in there, Jacob, while you think of that, what are some of the barriers, roadblocks you see from
To getting
preventing
there?
us to getting there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have all of these wild dreams and we just think like, man, this gets blocked because of this. And,
Yeah. Well, being the digital guy that I am, I cut my teeth, I made my bones, whatever you want to say, this is the background that I come from. I think that it is going to be a more competitive online. People are going to be buying more online. It's going to turn into more of a transactional type business, which is the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
Some might argue, hey, this is a relationship business. Well, yeah, for sure, once they've made that connection, but the customer doesn't care who the dealer is until they've gotten to that point of consideration.
Yeah. Because
Right?
where the ownership cycle makes them loyal. It's not just the purchase. Yeah.
That's it. Yes. And I've seen some of the work that you've done with the turnaround project while talking to some of your detractors, even, hey, this wasn't right and that wasn't right. And they leave you a bad review or whatever. And you go and you handle it and you turn that guy into someone that is a lifelong loyalist to your dealership, right? All that stuff has to be into play. But if you kind of think about it, when you sit back and you go, how can I take care of that guy, but how can I increase my business with new customers? Well, the biggest and the most accessible way to do that is all going to be online. But what are the customer's expectations? Well, if you take other companies that the customer deals with on a daily basis, there's your Amazons and there's your car dealerships, right? Because more people drive cars than they do motorcycles. There's all these other businesses that have examples of how the customer wants to do business with us. And unfortunately, I think for most of us in the industry, the powersports industry, we're still pretty old school. It's come into my dealership. I'm going to hammer on you for 2 hours. Once we make the deal, and I'm going to sweat you out in the F&I box, and you're going to buy my back end, and we're going to, invite you in, close and lock the door, and you're going to buy all the back end. And then, 8 hours later, maybe you can ride your bike home, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is going to change to an easier more transparent if it's not happening already, and especially AI provided deal making process. And that can go with anything new or used. It doesn't really matter. Here's a quick example. I did get a truck recently. Mine was aged out, and it was like, okay, it's time to upgrade. I used AI through several different dealers, and I'm only saying this because I'm assuming that your customers, whoever's listening to this, is doing the exact same thing, because I was able to just very simply ask AI how I should go about a truck buying process, and it's no different from a motorcycle or anything else that you want to buy for that matter.
Yeah.
And it basically listed out, well, here's some things that you can do, and you can do it like this and shop like this. And it even found me a couple of vehicles that I wanted to look at, and, provided listings and provided quotes and provided all sorts of things. And it was just up to me to start the negotiation online. But I bought mine basically through an email, came in, gave them a check, dropped off my trade, picked up the new vehicle, and I was gone. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just the expectation that we're going in so many places of our lives right now is, I want it hot and I want it fast and I want it now.
Yeah.
Don't make me wait 8 hours to do this deal, because I just don't want to do that anymore. I'm too busy. I've got shit going on. I got to take my kids to soccer practice. Let me just get my bike and get on with my life. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of argument. There's a lot of argument about digital retailing and whether that should be allowed in our power sports industry, allowing them to desk or pencil their own deal, get their own financing, get an estimated trade value, and, basically do half of the paperwork online before they even get there. Right. And I think that for the dealers who don't advance themselves enough to at least do most of those things are going to be left behind because they just haven't evolved enough to do it.
Yeah. Because they're making it hard to buy. And they may
Hard to
have
buy.
a great experience. They may still have a beautiful showroom. They may put on the most incredible show you possibly could imagine when you walk through the door. But if that customer didn't get the experience they wanted before they stepped in the door, they're never coming through the door. So it's
Yep.
just like, you need to do that first thing. And it's funny. I did the same thing when I traded my car in. I ended up going with Carvana, which I explained in the other podcast as well. And the experience of buying through Carvana was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But before I ever did that, I was trying to buy from the dealership. Like I same thing. Went to AI, said, here's my current car. Here's what I owe. Here's find me the JD Power value, find me KBB, list off all that stuff. So the first email I ever sent to that dealership was, every single thing that he would need to be able to identify that particular sale. Like, I wanted to do a lease originally, so I used Lease Hacker to identify what promos there are on the leases right now for what trades. Like, I did all of his homework and laid the entire thing out. And you would have thought my initial thought was, man, if I got that quote, I know this guy's still making margin. There's all these other rebates on there. Like, this is what I need. This is what I need out the door. This is how the math is going to work. Make it happen.
Yep.
He didn't get back to me for a week. And by the time he got back to me, he was like, I don't think I can get that deal done. And I was like, well, too late. I already bought the thing on Carvana. Like, you
Yeah.
It was just like, look, I would have loved to have come in and had the conversation, but consumers are now so informed. They're more informed than anyone on our team, not just because they care a bunch about the vehicle that they're buying. That used to be the problem, right? We have 5 brands in this showroom downstairs. And for me to expect each salesperson to know everything about every year, make, and model of every bike and be able to compete with the customer who's been researching it for 6 months and dreaming about it is kind of crazy. Like, of course, that guy's going to know more than my salesperson. Now we're at a point where my customer can learn more about not only the product, but about the sales process and how to avoid a Foursquare and how to do all these other things. And then we think that the old school model is still going to work now. And there's a lot of adjustment that needs to happen. And I think that it still comes back to 2 things. It is not only that we, the people who are actually trying to build the tools, not only do we have to build the tools that enable this stuff, you and me and Rowan and all the guys who are all part of this, ooh, let's build cool tools.
Yep.
But we also have to get dealers to be willing to try and adopt totally different workflows and processes than they had before. And there are dealers out there that are excited to change the process. And I'm sure I've talked to lots of dealership owners and general managers saying, I know we got to change stuff. Like, absolutely,
Yep.
there's no doubt about it. The problem is at the front line, getting our sales team to actually do the thing differently, or getting like the people who are expected to do the work to actually do, not that it's more work or more complicated or anything else, but like just to change. And I'm not
Yeah.
faulting them, because change sucks and change is hard. But if we don't change, we're just going to keep doing it the way that we're doing it right now, which isn't working. Like, it's
It's not. Yeah.
going down, you know?
What's funny is we used to have multiple roles within the sales department. We used to have the floor salesman, and they had typically a team leader, right? And then the hierarchy goes up from there. You have your finance manager, assistant sales manager, but over to the side, and this was part of the projects that I was in charge of, was we had this internet sales department.
Yeah.
And the two roles basically were, this person would handle all of the online leads and phone calls and chats and basically anything that came online that was a hand raiser. And once they set that appointment for the customer, they would hand it over to the floor sales guy. And the floor sales guy also had the occasional random walk-in as well, right? Not the non-appointed customer. And it was kind of a beautiful thing. But where I think that we should go with this is like, well, rather than having these two different types of skill set salespeople, is that we kind of mold them into a hybrid. One that can answer phone calls, one that can have a semi-scripted conversation with the customer where they're hitting bullet points on what to say, what not to say, how to advance the customer into appointment setting process. But when they come in, they are that person's salesperson, and they are able to do the rest of the deal, get through the presentation, get through a demo ride if there is one, get them into the F&I box, close them up with the paperwork. And that's really what it's going to have to turn into, is with that frontline comment that you made, is that I have to train these guys to be digital salespeople first, because that's where all their hand raisers are going to come from, and then be floor salespeople closers after.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point. So like, how do you build, and this comes back to you're in the tech space trying to figure this out. How do you build a workflow for a software tool that the flow doesn't happen yet? Like, we're building these things for what I think both of us are doing the same thing, where we're trying to build for the future model, not necessarily just for the now model. How do you build for the future model when nobody's doing the future model yet? It's just like, okay, we got to guide you to there and have the thing there at the same time. It's a pretty complicated, chicken or egg situation.
It is. And as a software guy now, I would say software is probably not the first solution that you would want to do. I would say training is, right? And even before training, the theory and having that mindset and that leadership to say, you know what, there's something that we need to put into place here that would train my people to do this type of function before this other function. I can already rely on their salesmanship, right? Because that's usually how people get into the business. They have the gift of gab and people like them. They become their friend, like you said earlier, right? But how do I translate all of that stuff to the phone, or to an email, or to a text message? How can I process or automate some of these things so that it does it for them? Again, back to the AI, there is software, or there's just very simple programs that you can get for free that would help you write an email or help you write a text so that you get the most engagement. And, some of that is starting to unfold now in everyday sales. But how do I theorize? How do I get into the mindset that this needs to happen, and then revolve a training program around it? And again, just to add to my resume here, that was also one of the parts that I had as a responsibility is, okay, once we get a lead in from these digital sources that we are paying for or doing organically, and somebody raises their hand and says, I'm interested in that unit, how do we take that person through a workflow that my salespeople can now do with all of that stuff? What do we say to them on the phone? What questions do we ask them? All of that stuff, right?
How do we
And so,
all then, we finally got them in.
yes,
Don't drop the ball yet.
that's right. Yeah.
That's great, man. What about service? I know that you work in the you're working in the sales side, but what do you think of, think back on your days of being under hot cars? What is it? What does the future look like back there, you think?
I see service as no different from sales. It's an evolution. Customers, they're going to have a little different expectation to the service department than they would with the sales. When they usually walk into a sales department, the wall is up and they're going to be on the defense. And it's the salesperson's job to take that wall down brick by brick and to get them to open up and, to probe and to ask questions and build rapport and all that stuff too. That also still applies with the service advisor side of it when they're dealing with the customers, but they're coming in and they're on the aggressive. They're like, man, my shit's broken. I'm fucking pissed. I want my stuff tomorrow. And, I want it to be, not so crazy. And they usually try to give a description like it's making this noise or it has this little jiggle or whatever. Can you help me diagnose this over the phone? Okay, well, let me walk you through the process. Let me walk you through the workflow and get you in here, get it inspected, get it looked at. But, I see... All right. This is getting into a broader conversation. So there's a lot of talk lately about AI taking a lot of the white collar jobs, right? Even taking over stuff like what we do. In 5 years, it'll be an AI person doing podcasts like we are doing now. So let's just take us out.
I might be.
I don't know. I don't know. And so am I, right?
Pretty good AI.
But when you're talking about the trades on the technician side, I'm a huge fan of Mike Rowe. And he has been consistently saying for the past 15 years, we've been telling our youth to go get a college degree and to learn how to write code and be software or be digital and be all that stuff. And that's great up until about a few years ago when you can basically have a layman's understanding of how code is and then have your AI do it for you. So all that shit's out the window. I see our technicians as the cornerstone of that trade market because, number one, there's a huge lack of it right now. There's not enough technicians to go around. And so all the ones that we have are super valuable in terms of what they can do for us and the money that they can make for us, but also they're making a whole bunch of money too, because they can do that. So if you're interested in wrenching, definitely get into a good trade school if you can. Learn how to work on stuff. Now is the time before AI comes and takes your job, just like it'll take both of ours.
Exactly. Yeah, these will be gone.
Well, yeah, we need to utilize the AI to help the technicians to keep up with the technicians. Yeah, we've got a shortage of technicians, but there's so many inefficiencies in as you know, in the service department that are not because of technicians being slow. That's usually the last problem that a dealership has.
Yeah, man.
How many techs do you have there at Moto Julia?
Right now we have 2. I know, right? It's thin at the moment. Although it's actually not that crazy. This store has historically been about a 300 unit store. So when we were humming before we sold, I was a 3 technician shop. It wasn't that much crazier, but I'm a huge fan of support staff. So my non-tech to tech ratio is usually really high. So we always had expediters or like assistant staff to technicians. We had assistant staff to the advisors. Like that's how you really as of right now, that's how you make a department 100% proficient. You have to have a lot of support for those technicians so they never have to stop wrenching, wait for a part, wait for approval. Like they've always got that next bike ready. And that is a very dialed in process that you got to talk about every day and you got to train it constantly. And so, taking back over the dealer lab, we sorted some of those things out, cleaned up the shop, added in some of these assistant roles, but it takes a little while to rebuild that department. But ultimately that's going to be the moneymaker of a smaller store like this, is getting those customers back through, especially when you're talking about brands like Ducati and that kind of stuff. Like the maintenance expenses are high, and it also means the absorption of the dealership is high. So service is a huge focus for us. And obviously Danny and I being fixed ops guys as were you, but like still being so focused on it, that's our number one priority. Like, yes, we want to help sales happen. We think that's incredibly important to make sure you're managing your front end inventory properly, that you're moving enough products, that your sales guys are aggressive, but not too aggressive. Like that's all very important. And you're right that you got to sell the unit to be able to service the unit. But we really feel like there's an and to that, not a but. There's an and to the fact that if I sell you a unit, I do all this great work and invest all this time and energy and training into convincing you to become a motorcyclist, and then I drop the ball as soon as you become the motorcyclist because owning it sucks, you're never coming
Yep.
back. Like, I've lost you forever and I pissed you off, and you're going to tell your friends, don't go buy a motorcycle. It's a waste of time. So I think it's fun to work with guys like yourself, where I know that, you know, your focus is really, how do we make sure that we're getting these inventory management right, we're getting the products out there, and then to be able to so perfectly complement that and say, let's keep them around and let's make sure that we're getting the next one sold through. But like, we're going to make sure that the customers that are here are having a good time. And if we can
Yep.
make them have a good time through easier, our idea with AI has really been, I really don't want AI communicating with my customers. I don't want that. I've
Really?
looked at a lot of, yeah, I'm granted, there are use cases for it that I think you can argue. Like, yes, a chatbot on the website's going to capture more communications than any other. That's awesome. But again, what I'm doing is I'm doing a great job of bringing my leads into the store to underwhelm them right now. So that's not the first
Mm.
thing I got to fix. So the first thing I got to fix is getting the customers in and giving them a great experience. And there's some really cool AI tools. I'm not going to like bash them, but like, you know, you can call a service department and it's an AI voice that schedules you for service. And I bet they schedule more appointments than service advisors do. Like, I have no doubt about that. But I've also listened to recordings of those. And the moment that a customer recognizes they're talking to a robot and not a human, the tone in their voice
Yep.
changes dramatically.
Yep.
It's like, ooh, like I understand we're accomplishing the task, but I'm not giving a delightful experience. Like, I wanted the delightful experience to happen. So our whole concept of what we're trying in the dealer lab is like, when you're communicating with us, you're communicating with a human. The only way I can make that happen is by taking stuff off the plate of the human. So if I can make it easier for the advisor to do their job because I'm taking off the bullshit work, you know, the busy work that goes on, then that advisor, his day's better, he's got more time, and he can actually answer that phone call. He can actually do the outgoing correspondence we needed to. And so that's the approach that we're trying to take it to, is like, make the employee's job more delightful than it currently is so that they can deliver that same human-to-human interaction and delight to the end consumer. Because ultimately, I think in power sports, you're right, there's differences between automotive and power sports. And when
For
I
sure.
bring my motorcycle into my motorcycle shop, I want to talk to my motorcycle dude. Like, that's the part of the relationship. I want him to tell me that he thinks my motorcycle's cool because that brings me joy. I don't care if dropping my Volvo off to the service advisor if he tells me that's a really cool mom car you got there. Like, that's just not, I don't need that. Like, I could talk to AI for that shit. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But I still need the personal touch with my hobbies. And so that's our ethos, and that's what we're trying and testing and rolling out through the dealer lab. But I think both these things can work really cohesively. And maybe you mentioned that you come from a different dealership experience where ours is more mom and pop. And maybe that is part of it. Maybe that's why I see it this way, because I still believe that the mom and pop experience and like the community hub experience is really important for it. But I also don't believe that having a larger high volume store, that wouldn't be a valuable asset to do that, you know?
For sure.
Keep that person to person communication happening. So,
And to double click on that, I mean, there are varying degrees of how AI can be implemented into a dealership. I agree with you. The phone call placed to the service department and you're talking to a robot and they figure it out. Yes, the tone changes 100%.
Yeah.
But if it's the outbound stuff and it's we'll call it phishing, right? Not fishing with a PH, but phishing like I'm trying to get new customers, or I'm trying to get them to respond to an email, or I'm trying to just get engagement from my database of customers that I'm reminding them for a 10,000-mile service checkup, or I'm reminding them that it's been 10 days since they submitted their lead on this new bike.
yeah.
Right. That's where AI can communicate very well. And
I
here's
agree.
the use case. Here's the use case behind it, is that if you have a salesperson doing this and they are capped out by hours in the day and limited to the training that you give them, because there is so many different scenarios that one customer can have versus the next. And so when you talk to when you talk about using AI to do some of these things in varying degrees of it, they will always ask the questions that you want asked. They will always respond in the way that you want responded.
Oh yeah, the experience will be better, no doubt.
It's a consistency thing, right? And really, when you talk about volume, that's all you're looking for in the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's the experience of it, and you want to have those wholesome heart to heart, hey man, I really care about you. That comes after the engagement when somebody responds and they have that human in the loop for that AI back and forth.
It's a really, really good point. There's actually, have you ever heard of a CRM called Takobi? It's mainly in the automotive space. You seen it yet?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Really cool. I talked to the founder, I don't know, maybe a year ago now. Really super nice guy. And one of the things, the way that they were using AI, and it may have evolved since then because everything in AI has evolved so much, but I thought it was really creative how they were using it. It was where, at least then, the AI wasn't necessarily the one creating the lead or doing all the back and forth communication with them or all that. What initially that AI was doing was simply making sure the lead didn't go cold. So like, let's say I send the F&I, or I send my my finance application, and from a sales guy perspective, they volleyed the ball over to the customer, like, all right, you fill this in, and now that task is off their plate, and they've got other customers to worry about, and it can very easily go cold. So what their AI did was to simply go back through and realize, oh, this guy hadn't responded in 24 or 48 hours, whatever that time frame was, and go, hey, did you fill in that F&I product yet? And as soon as the customer replies again, it gets kicked back over to the actual sales guy to be to the human that's back in the loop again. So I think you're right. Like, again, that is an instance of the AI communicating directly with the consumer, and that doesn't feel gross. And again, I'm not saying all of it feels gross. I'm not saying that like I understand the idea of being able to send an automated email that says, hey, you probably have positive equity, or a reminder email that was completely human out of the loop. But like, I think of it that like this Volvo that I bought, I got a lot of experiences out of this. There's the salesman at the Volvo dealership that I had talked to that never, like, took a week to reply, all this other stuff. That dude sent me I literally just today, I got another like phishing marketing email from him. And I was like, hey, the last time you sent me one of these phishing marketing emails, I told you exactly what I needed and you never replied. So like, maybe you should recognize that when AI sends me a message, you should reply to the thing I sent back. Like, it's just like, that's where the disconnect happens, because then you realize that like the beautifully prompted message that you sent to me that made it seem like you gave a shit about me was clearly fake. Like, that's where I get concerned about relying so much on AI, because I can have ChatGPT or Claude or anything write the most beautiful email and send it on its own and do all those things. But if my processes in my store and my human in the loop isn't awake when that happens, it's all the experience is still gonna go back to what it was before.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, we as dealers have to do more with less. AI is here to stay. If you don't know how to use it, or try some things in your dealership to make you and your team more efficient, then you're going to be left behind, right? I want every dealership in this industry to advance themselves to a point to where they can make more money. We can grow as an industry. We can get more manufacturers to be participating in providing cooler product that we can all love and enjoy, and turn that into a secondary pre-owned market, right? So it's a big, big cycle that 100% revolves around that initial conversation of getting customer to buy from dealer, right? So if AI can do that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, whatever steps can make that happen. So
For sure.
man, this was a great hour and some change. We got the chat here. You were originally to come to New Orleans, so I'm kind of bummed you don't get to hang out here. But where are you going? Where are you going this time? Is it this weekend?
Yeah, man. Sorry. I got an opportunity to go to the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas, COTA. And watch some super bikes. Never been. I am a pretty big fan of the industry as a whole. Never been to a MotoGP in my life. I felt like it was a pretty big deal, and
Yeah.
I should at least go once and experience this sport and see some really super cool things.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
very fun. So yeah, I'm not actually upset with you at all. As soon as you sent that text, I was like, oh no, go to COTA. That's gonna be so much
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Thank
one
you
of
for
these
your
days you got to
flexibility too.
go ride at COTA one of these days soon. So
I yes, I was invited by the Aprilia group, and I will be on Monday doing a test ride on the track on a RSV4, and it's going to be super killer. They said they have some guys out there from Dianese, and I'll get a full tracksuit and a
dude.
helmet and everything. So I'll take pictures and post them for
Yeah.
sure.
Send me some pictures.
awesome.
That sounds like a great time, man. Well, Jacob, dude, great chatting with you. And yeah, let's keep in touch about all the fun stuff you're doing. We'll keep sharing our ideas and help this industry keep moving forward.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate what you're doing. I love the Dealer Lab, by the way. I think you guys are doing the Lord's work, and we're just going to, as two dueling podcasts here, we'll put this out there, and hopefully that will spread some good news to the dealers that listen to it.
I dig it. Thank you, man. All right, man. We'll see you
Awesome.
soon.
This episode is brought to you by ZDMS. Hey guys, physical inventory is something most dealerships do once, maybe twice a year. And let's be honest, it's a painful process. Counting thousands of parts and accessories, chemicals and tires, it can take a whole bunch of time, and often you got to close your doors to do it. But there's a better way. ZDMS RFID physical inventory. With RFID tags placed on inventory, you can cycle count or conduct physical inventory in just one evening with an RFID handheld scanner by simply pulling the trigger and walking around your dealership. These RFID scanners, they don't require line of sight, so your counters don't need to bend under partitions or climb shelves to do it. You'll have accurate, up-to-date data leading to better analytics that will help you improve your utilization, avoid obsolescence, and reduce lost sales. So contact ZDMS today to learn more about smarter inventory management built for modern dealerships. Or better yet, go to zdms.com/fixit. That's ZIIDMS.com/fixit, FIXIT.